Good morning, folks. Welcome once again to this week's edition of the Aurum podcast, and we are so glad that you joined with us. I'm your host, Anthony Kuria, and we welcome you to the Aurum podcast. This is where we discuss all matters HR. And together with me, once more, I have two ladies here who are joining with me. I have Zipporah Kuria, and who is my co-host, as it were. And I have our guests, the HR specialist, Martha Thuku. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
Welcome. Awesome. Now, today we want to continue with what we were discussing last week. If you remember, last week we had a wonderful session of discussing the role of HR in business strategy. Remember, we are still in this month of January, we are still discussing the issues of starting the year right. January is when everything is done in place. You put your strategies in place, make sure your kids have gone to school. You plan for the year, what's going to take place. If you have personal goals you want to, look forward to. January is the month of planning, preparation, vision writing, vision casting. And now when it comes to business, it's important to start it right. And from a HR perspective, the issue of the role of HR in business is very important. So last week we were discussing a number of things, and I remember we got a lot of comments. Can you tell us more about this? Can you discuss more about that? And that's what we want to talk about today. And Martha, last week you set this podcast on fire. We're getting comments, man. This Martha is a wonderful guest. And therefore, let me start with you on where we were last week. On the first thought that I have in my mind is, what is the importance of strategic HR management?
Thank you so much, Tony, for that.
Yes.
And viewers, welcome again. And maybe we can just remember what we talked, what strategy is. And we said it's a written document that points out the way forward for a business to achieve its objectives. We also said that it defines various decisions for allocation of resources. And one of those resources is the human resources. So, and that's what brings the importance of strategic HR planning, because that is part of that bigger picture of the whole business strategy.
Sure.
So when you have strategic HR planning, then you find in every area of HR where you need interventions and HR solution, be it recruitment, be it performance management, be it even compensations and benefits like we saw last time, then you have to have a strategic HR, because then you are able to make decisions that you see, like for compensation, you need to be equitable. So you need to plan as per the organization strategy as far as compensation and benefits are concerned. So you engage this person, this one fits in this grade. So you will not have issues where someone is negotiating, you are giving one person 100 shillings, and for the same role, you're giving another person 3,000 shillings. So that's not equitable. Your organization will not have good reputation, and there will be a lot of disharmony. And at this point, I can give Zippy to add some more. Thank you.
All right. What's your role, Zip? What's your thinking, Zippy?
Thank you, Martha. I think Martha has put it very well, and she has reminded us of what strategy is. And just to talk a little bit about what the importance of strategy is in terms of HR, I think number one, it helps you have a clear roadmap. It helps you plan and anticipate what staffing needs that you will need for whatever is coming. Assuming that you have a project that is coming in another 1 or 2 months or in another year's time, you need to be able to plan and know what exactly is it that I'm needing. And I think when we talk about the needs, we're not just talking about the staff alone. There's a lot of other aspects we need to consider. We need to consider, do we have the space? We need to consider, do we have the tools for these people that we are anticipating to come to the organization? We need to anticipate what risks are involved when we are going to bring in these people on board. And it's a lot when it comes to needs. So we are not just talking about the needs in terms of the people, but we are broadening it and looking at the other aspects that come with it. Sorry. The other thing is you need to be able to facilitate and develop and give access to training opportunities. So assuming that, again, you're going to have a project running, you need to ask yourself, the people I'm bringing on board, do they have an understanding of what this project would require? Or are we going to be able to do training? And what kind of training do we need to do? In terms of the people are already on board, are there people we need to utilize for this project? Do they have the skills that are required, or do we need to start to plan in terms of training these people? So there's a lot we need to look at when we say, let's plan, and the importance that comes with it. The other thing I would say is minimize the staff costs. Sometimes when we don't plan, we end up having bigger budgets that we are not able to manage. But when we plan well, we are able to work within the budgets that are available. So it's important for us to know, where do we cut costs? Where do we need to adjust the cost so that, again, it's manageable and it benefits the business in the long run? We have to remember at the end of the day, it's about making profits. So if we are going to run an organization and we're going to move to the next level, we need to make the impact for the business. So how are we going to do that? By minimizing the costs that we need to minimize. Of course, it's through planning. So you can see there's a very critical role in terms of HR having to plan ahead. And I always say, even for smaller businesses where you feel probably you don't have an HR in-house,
yes,
and you need to employ staff, at the end of the day, you still need to plan. You cannot do business without planning. So you need to look ahead. When I meet with smaller businesses, I always say, let's first look at your organogram and look at where your business needs to be in another 5 years. Put those positions in your organogram. Put those job descriptions in that organogram. Let people understand in the business, as you start your few, but let them understand this is where the business is going. These are the opportunities that are available. So that even within, you're able to grow your own team. So again, you start planning early and know this is where we are going. We may not be there, but this is where we are going. These are the steps we have to take for us to be able to get there. So there's a lot that we need to do in terms of planning to achieve the business strategy.
And maybe I can still chip in a bit. Zipporah, thank you for that. You realize planning is important because you're able to sit down and first see ahead and see, this is how success will look like to me.
yes.
So at the end of the day, the business needs to define first what success means. And for the HR, it also helps you achieve in running the mission and the vision of the organization, because you are the custodian, and provide a sense of direction even for your department. It's from that planning that you come up with some strategies and work plans that define measurable goals. So even when you're setting, let's say, performance management, and you're bringing up key result areas, they need to come out from that strategy. So planning is so important for you to come up with what we call SMART key result areas that you can cascade to your staff. And so each one is clear on their goals. As Zippy has talked about the organization chart, which shows the reporting lines. Everything is clear. There's no blur things. And she has said also about reducing costs. Reducing costs, you make sure that then your cash flow is well planned for, so that you don't lose also on cash flow. Thank you so much.
Wow, ladies, today you're sending this thing, to become hot. I can already, I am hearing meat and bones from what you're talking about. I like the way Martha has put it, that the HR department is the custodian, is the human resource custodian of a farm. We have a financial custodian who is probably the financial controller and all that. But now the HR department is a custodian of the company, being able to speak to the CEO or to the executive directors about this is where we are. This is looking at the overall strategy of the company. This is how we plug in, and these are the needs that we have. These are the skills and techniques. Skills, that we need to hire or need to develop internally in order for us to be able to achieve the goals. And I also like what Zippy has said about, remembering that as much as you're HR, you're also part of the organization, and the core exists. One of the major reasons a company exists is to make profit. So you've got to think about that even as you do your planning. Now,
Anthony, actually, if you could allow me to just say something that I've just remembered. When you're doing planning, especially for your manpower planning, sometimes you need to look at it and see, do I need long-term employees? Do I need short-term employees? So even in terms of contractual agreement, am I going to give long-term contracts? Am I going to give short-term contracts? Am I looking for casuals? Is it a project that is tied to a specific time? Because again, sometimes when we lack to foresee ahead, what would happen is we plan for all these people, we end up giving them contracts, probably long-term contracts. And what happens over time, we start realizing we are overstaffed. We have many people in the organization than what we need. And what happens, we have to end up doing redundancies that could have been prevented by doing the right contractual agreements in the right place, in the first place. So I think it's also important when we are planning to foresee how long are we going to need these people? Is it a long-term project? Is it a short-term project?
All right, which now brings me to the second thought that you've just said. Bringing what you've just said, now it brings me to the second thought that I had today. What are the risks of not planning? Zippy, probably you can continue with that theme.
I was hoping that you could ask Mother that question, but let me think through this. So what are some of the risks? I think actually I might have touched on that without realizing the first response I gave. On when you don't plan well, you end up overstaffing your organization sometimes. Not all the times, but there's a risk of overstaffing. There's a risk of burdening your wage bill. And I think for most of us, we have realized the salary budget is normally among the biggest expenditures of any organization. So if you're not careful, you realize all your cash flow is being eaten by wages, and you start struggling in having to fund whatever the activities the business needs to be funded on. So I think it's important for us to understand the numbers, to understand what exactly are these numbers going to be doing. I think the other thing is we need to we are talking about the risk of not planning. The other thing would be if you don't plan well, then you will find yourself in a situation where you might not have the necessary space, for instance. You might not have the necessary tools, for example. So when we are planning, we need to know what are the functions of these different positions. What exactly are these people going to need for them to be able to execute their duties? What are the risks that are going to be involved in this job that they are doing? So if we don't plan well, then we find ourselves in a situation where these things are not in place. People have come on board, and now they are sitting, idle, or they are lost because we have not planned properly for them. So those are some of the risks that I would just say out on top of my mind, and I would think Martha would have a bit to add on to that.
Thank you so much, Zippy, and you have said well. And if I can continue first with your thinking line, especially for HR, you realize one of the key planning, which Zippy had alluded to, is having the right people at the right place at the right time. And that's why it is important for HR to plan, which she said, then that helps you know what kind of contractual arrangements you're going to have with every position.
Sure.
And then that helps also in cutting down on costs. When you need a short-term contract, then you give that short-term contract. And if you need a long-term, you give that long-term. You just know how to navigate through that. The other thing I would want to add is if you don't have a plan, then you lack clear objective and vision for future.
That's true.
So what I can ask maybe, if you do not have a goal that you are working towards,
yes.
So how will you know when you get there?
Yeah.
So I also read my Bible, and in Habakkuk it says, write down the vision and make it plain, so that even those you give, they are able to run with it.
Exactly.
Another part of the Bible says, without a vision, the people perish. So without a vision, the business will perish, because then you don't have goals you are working towards. You are just reporting to work, doing your thing, going home, thinking, oh, now I need a tea girl. Oh, now I need a finance person. You go get your sister. You go get your cousin. So you find your business is just full of clutter. Let me not call people clutter, but people who are not adding value in your
Yes.
life. You know,
Yes.
resources not allocated properly can end up in cash flow issues. And then you end up winding up. So those are some of the risks that are very expensive for lack of planning. Thank you so much.
Wow, Martha, I like that. I mean, I like the way you've put it, clutter, because you'll be very surprised. Zippy and
Yeah.
I, as HR consultants, have gone into businesses, and these are big businesses. We're not talking about a shop out here. We're talking somebody with 20, 30, 50 employees. And even some of them are even bigger, over 100 employees. And the way you've described it, people are hired ad hoc. I need a financial controller. Oh, I have a niece or I have a nephew who did CPA. What our kuje? How we'll pay them? We will agree. You need this, you bring. So at the end of the day, by the time you're asking us as HR specialists to come and help you design a HR plan for you, whether it is in January or in September, we are finding a lot of anomalies. And you're wondering, okay, how did you hire this person? Do you have an organogram? Blah, blah, blah. So yeah, they may sound funny, but these are things that happen. And they don't just happen to small organizations, they happen even to big organizations. When the founder and entrepreneur, the lead person realizes, oh my Lord, what have I done? I need to declutter the whole place from a HR perspective. Which now brings
Actually,
me.
again, if you could allow me, something else I've just remembered in terms of when you don't plan well.
Yes.
Sometimes you find the work that we might need to be done would require regulation or some sort of a compliance with the government institution.
Yes.
Now, what I've realized over time, some of these regulations or some of these compliance issues sometimes actually take time. So again, if you don't start planning early, you find yourself in a situation where you've brought people on board. There are some compliance issues that need to be met, and you're stuck in moving forward because the compliance has not happened. And what happens? Actually, this ends up costing the organization because you've already brought in the people, so they have to be paid. So again, you can see how planning is so critical by looking at the finer details of what needs to happen. Again, the other risk I'm thinking about, and from a business perspective, if our HR team again doesn't plan well, then this affects our business delivery. So you will find when we're delivering for our customers, the customers might end up not being very happy because we did not plan well. And because we did not plan well, of course, it affects our delivery. And when it affects our delivery, you also have to remember it also affects their business. So again, it becomes a cycle. So again, you can see the importance of planning. So not planning has serious adverse effect to businesses.
Good.
Yes, and that is called resource allocation. And for strategy involves resource allocation, especially staffing matters as far as HR is concerned. So it's in that strategy and the planning that you also are able to find out what skills do you need for what kind of position. Because once you understand the skills, then you're able to recruit the right people. So even if the director is forcing you to employ their relative, then their skill need to match with that skill. Because then you're able to say no, because then if we employ this person, we will not achieve for the organization. And the most important here is to remain afloat, make profits, and for the organization to grow. So it is the HR who is able to guide that process, because then you are able to be able to work with your directors, and you are telling them, even if you bring people, they must be qualified for the positions we have as far as the strategy is concerned. So you see, it's something, it's cascaded. Lack of planning, it cascades things, and at the end of the day, it's a great risk for the organization. Thank you.
Wow. Yeah, we can dwell on the issues of risks of not planning. We can have another whole podcast just on that. And I want to welcome the comments that are coming in. Charlie Nyamori, thank you for logging in. We appreciate your comments. Please send your comments to us. We will look to discuss about them, talk about them, even as we continue. Now, the third question that comes into mind is, what strategies does HR employ with employees to have their buy-in? Yes, let's discuss the first part. What strategies does the HR employ with employees to have their buy-in? If Zippy, probably let me ask you that one first.
Thank you, Anthony. I think this is a question that was asked in the last podcast by one of our good viewers, I think Mr. Wangombe.
Yes.
And I think it's very important for us to engage our employees in when we are coming up with our strategies and when we're implementing these strategies. Otherwise, it becomes a flop. And one of the things I'm thinking is you need to sensitize the team members. You need to sensitize the staff. You need to make them understand what is the organization vision, what is the strategy for the business, and what is their role to play. How do they plug into this strategy? And how we can do this, number one, we sensitize them through trainings, through focus groups, where we are able to actually get the input and get feedback from them. And once we do this, then we don't just get the feedback and do nothing about it. The other day I had someone say, sometimes we get feedback from staff not to make use of it, but to make them feel part of it. And I disagree with that line of thinking. If you are not going to engage your team members, their feedback is very critical. I think it's important to take that feedback and put it into consideration when you're making decisions. Because if you don't do that, they will realize they give feedback, but that feedback is never put into consideration. So what will happen the next time when you go to them, they will not be open to give you any feedback or to participate. And now you start having some sort of a resistance. So I will always say, sensitize your team members, train them, bring them together, let them give you their views of what they think it is that can be done. You have a big plan. You need to help them understand what is their role. How do they plug in to help you achieve this? So I think that is one of the things that we need to do. And of course, making sure feedback is important. Incorporate that feedback in whatever you're doing.
Okay, and I can maybe just add on to what Zippy is saying about involving employees. It's very important. Remember, they are the implementers of your strategy. So up here, you are decision makers, but there are the people who are on the ground who are doing the work. So it is very important to involve them in the strategic planning process. Yes. And you can do this maybe through meetings or having representatives in that strategic making table. Have some representatives there within those discussions. You can also maybe put some monkey surveys out there and kind of ask some questions that are deliberate towards the targeting on the strategy and what you want to do. You can even have suggestion boxes also that are deliberate. The other thing I can point out is what Zippy said about training. Educating the staff is so important, and make sure that they know, there's the bigger strategy that should be cascaded in every department. Yes. So every department strategy should also be cascaded to every staff. So meaning there's no one who's coming with a job role that is out of this big picture. So we for HR, we have a key result area, let's say 4 in the strategy. And these are our deliverables. Yes. So Martha, your deliverables are these. Out of this strategy, BP, your deliverables are this. Tony, yours are these. And those are the ones we will measure you with. So that we are all logging into the strategy. Once you have educated, then it's also good to just communicate. You can't just say, you send a memo, this is what we are doing, and you think we have all read. What I have learned about Kenya, if you don't want them to know anything, write it down and give them to read. They will not read. And so you also have to educate them by communicating. How do you communicate? You have meetings. You just bring out the strategy as it looks like, and you show them, in our department we are part of this strategy and we are here. Key result 5 is ours, and these are our deliverables. And then you give them a chance to find from each person, out of this, what do you think you can deliver? That means I'm the one who have come up with my own deliverables for the strategy. So I'll also own my goals, and I will own them to the point that I want to achieve them. So once you communicate and you roll it out, then the final thing you can do is do a performance appraisal. So first of all, their evaluations may be mid-term evaluations, monthly, quarterly, where you now go visit, you are in a meeting and you're finding out where have we reached, which goals did we give each other and they are not working, what can we change? So that, because you have a clear direction where you're going, and if this thing is not working, a strategy is never static. So there's a way you can be flexible as long as the objective is what you are running towards. Once you have done all those evaluations, then come maybe end of year, you have a performance management appraisal. This is what I agreed to do at the beginning of the year, and this is what I have done. So you're having evaluation from the set goals against the outcome. And for me, that will make sure that the employees are in it, they are buying in, and they are sold out to the vision. Thank you.
You've really broken it down for us and for our listeners and viewers to understand how does it work. I can see Alice Seda Njogo is really an admirer of Martha. She's saying, recently we had an onboarding for a big team and Martha guided it with innovative ideas that have resulted in very high motivation among the team members. So Martha, I can see you have people who are saying what you're saying is what you do. And for our viewers, that this is what we are talking about. That we have people who feel that this thing is doable. When you talk about employees having buy-in, this is something that can be done. We are not talking about theory, we are talking about practice. I remember in the banking industry, one of my former employers, we would have weekly meetings, all of us, the whole branch, because I was working in a branch. And I would be told, Anthony, what your targets are this for this month or for this quarter. How far are you in getting them done? And that would happen to other departmentals, people in credit, people in cash, people in operations. Everybody would speak and we would look at the overall picture. And as much as sometimes, people, managers are different. There are those who will bulldoze the targets. There are those who will cajole you. There are those who will, but at the end of the day, we all knew why we are coming to the office every morning. And that level of buy-in is important for the team to achieve the goals of the strategy. Now, I can see our time is really going, but I have one final question, which I wanted to hear from you ladies. How do you create stakeholder engagement into the overall business strategy? Yeah, I don't know.
I can go fast, and I'm thinking that's what we touched on. We touched on that question just now, and we talked about to create stakeholder engagement, first is to involve them. So you must think about how you can involve them for you to gain buy-in. And that's why we said one of the things is to ensure they have either representatives in the meetings that you are holding, because then they will feel like they are part of the process. And you can do many things. As I said, you can do surveys, you can do and then even when you have these representatives, they can go and educate their members and bring feedback on how people have bought, whether they have bought and what they are saying. So at the end of the day, the most important thing is you want to gain buy-in. Once someone has bought in, they are able to run with a vision. The other thing I said is that you don't leave them. like someone has mentioned about we did, where I work, we did a massive recruitment that entailed we do a massive orientation, which we did online, and it worked. Because you see, you want these people to feel part of the organization. They are stakeholders, and actually they are the implementers. You are just on top here. You know, in management, you find managers are in a lot of meetings. They're mostly not part of the day-to-day running of what is going on. So these people who you are working with, if they do not even understand even the mission and vision of the organization, they do not understand the strategy, they do not understand the way we do things here, then they will always be disengaged. So you're running north, they're running south. And so you find your objectives are not being met. Like where I work, we have targets from the donors, and they have to be met. You have to be able to give the people running with the program, they have to know the targets. And so every time you're evaluating, like let's say monthly evaluations, that person knows this is my area and this is where my targets have reached. Do I need to, have I achieved, or do I need to put in more effort? And what other strategies can I employ? So you see, once I own my targets, I'll be able to look for resources and ways to make sure I meet my targets. Because at the end of the day, I have to meet my goals. And also, as I said about performance management. So that is what you can use now to get people engaged, because then they know at the end of the year, there's going to be some performance management. And most of our organizations, especially in the profit organizations, they put a bonus there. So that bonus helps in engagement. Because if you have a score, you know, normally they associate it with a score of your performance. The higher the score, the higher the bonus. I know I worked in a bank, and that was, you find some people are taking home a lot of money just because of that performance. So it's very good to add that score. I mean, the bonus, if the organization is able to do that, because then it helps people feel like that organization is theirs. The other thing I learned, like in some of the banks, they even sell shares to the staff. And you know, when you are a shareholder, then you are an owner. So when you are working, you're not working for them now, you're working for us. So I know that Equity Bank sold shares to their staff. And at the end of the day, that brings a lot of stakeholder engagement, especially from the part of the staff, because then you want the organization to prosper, so that you also get good benefits from that take. Thank you. I'll leave Zippy to add some more. Thank you.
I think I handled this very well in terms of stakeholders, not just employees. Depend your strategies. You need people. You might need other stakeholders. For instance, you might not be one. You need another organization where, you know, they need to support you in your recruitment process. And this is where, again, you have to engage them and allow them to understand what is it that you're really looking for, so that whatever they are doing actually marries with your own strategy. And this is actually where we come in as Aurum consultants, where we can support you in some of these functionalities. And the other thing I would say would be like suppliers. Again, suppliers from an HR perspective come in many ways. It could be you need insurance for your teams that are coming on board. Then how are you going to engage the stakeholder in the insurance industry? Do you have a person to handle that for you, or do you need to engage someone? You need to do trainings for these staff who are coming in, or for staff who are already in existence. These are suppliers you need to deal with as part of stakeholders that would help you in your strategy. Do they know what your policies are, and how do you engage your suppliers? So these are some of the things I think it's important for you to look at. And again, like I always keep on saying, these are some of the things we do help businesses navigate, and we can be able to help you navigate the same.
Yeah, and I can add a bit and say that what I learned, especially without planning, you can actually go to work every morning, you go home in the evening, you are so tired, but really when you look at what you have done, you have nothing tangible.
Yes.
So that's the reason why you plan, because once you plan, then you're able to put your key resort areas that even, in HR, by the way, HR is a complicated office, because by the time you wake up, even before you shower, you have some calls from staff, A, O, B, medical here, O, not coming to work, C, D. Those things, Tony, can take your day.
That
If
is
you
true.
don't have a plan, my deliverables come the end of the year. So as you do all these other many things, there's somewhere you are looking at your key resort areas that will be measurable and they will add value to the organization. So I'm not saying these are the things concerning staff. Well, employee welfare is so good. If you handle it nicely, then your employees, they feel also motivated.
Sure.
But those things can take the whole day of a HR. You look at what you wanted to do that day, you find you never touched any of those. And so that's why you need a plan, because you need to keep going there and check, what was I supposed to do? And then you do that, because those ones are adding to the strategy of the organization, as long as you keep the work environment and the staff welfare going well. And I think once you have those in touch, you'll find that employees are easy to buy in things when they feel involved and when they feel valued. Organizations that mess are the ones who they make decisions, they do the strategy, then they give you, here is that what you are supposed to go to run with. So it is not their thing. We are doing it for the organization. So they will not buy in, and you will not have good results. But when you bring them to buy in, you'll find how easy it is even to surpass your targets. Thank you.
Wow. Ladies, today we have really gone into the meat and bones of this discussion. And as I said earlier, even one of these topics, we could have discussed it for the last 40 plus minutes. But thank you. Our time has come to an end. I want to thank you both Zippy and Martha for logging in, for pouring your wisdom. I can even see the comments that were coming in were really appreciating what the things that we are discussing. And I thank you, Paris, for even your for your comments even concerning this. Now, for our viewers and listeners, we welcome your comments. We are always welcome. The podcast, yes, it's once a week, but you can still send your insights to us through our email address, consult@aurumconsultants.co.ke, even through Facebook, and even through LinkedIn. If you want to know more about what we do here at Aurum Consultants and how we can help you, kindly log in. Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, we are all in there. And we are here to be able to help companies maximize their HR potential and reach their overall business strategy. So Martha, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
We can see even you have fans out there, and it's always a pleasure having you in here, to be with us discussing all matters HR. Zippy, also thank you very much for logging in. This is your host, Anthony Kuria. Let's meet here, same time, same place, to discuss all matters HR. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.